gold, frankincense, and myrrh. We've heard these words so many times they've become almost musical. A Christmas carol refrain, a checklist of exotic treasures. But I want you to pause with me for a moment and ask a question we rarely consider. Why these three gifts? The Magi were scholars, astronomers, advisors to kings. They didn't choose gifts carelessly. When you're traveling 1,000 miles to honor a newborn king, you don't grab random items off a shelf. Every choice carries meaning. So why gold? Why frankincense? Why myrrh? I've been digging into this, and what I found has genuinely surprised me. These weren't just expensive presents. They were prophetic declarations, each one telling a story about who this child would become. Gold speaks of royalty. That one's fairly obvious. But frankincense? That's a substance used in temple worship, burned on altars before God. It's the gift you give a priest. And myrrh, here's where it gets haunting. Myrrh was used primarily for one purpose in the ancient world, preparing bodies for burial. Think about that. These Persian scholars, following a star to find a newborn king, brought him a burial spice. At his birth, they were already pointing toward his death. Coincidence? I don't think so. The prophet Isaiah, writing 700 years before Jesus was born, described a future scene. Nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. All from Sheba will come, bearing gold and incense. Isaiah 60 verses 3 and 6. Gold and incense. The Magi's gifts were written into prophecy centuries before they packed their bags. Over the next few minutes, I want to unwrap each of these gifts with you. We'll explore where they came from, what they cost, and what they meant. By the end, I think you'll see the Christmas story in a whole new light. Let's start with gold. Gold, the universal symbol of wealth and power. In the ancient world, gold wasn't just valuable, it was royal. Kings wore it. Temples gleamed with it. When you presented gold to someone, you were acknowledging their sovereignty. Psalm 72 verse 15 speaks of the Messiah. Long may he live. May gold from Sheba be given him. The Magi brought gold because they recognized a king. But here's what I find fascinating. Jesus was born into poverty. Mary and Joseph couldn't afford a lamb for the temple sacrifice after his birth. They offered 2 doves instead, the provision for the poor. Luke 2 verse 24, Leviticus 12 verse 8. Yet foreign dignitaries arrived bearing gold fit for royalty. Now, frankincense. This one requires a bit more explanation. Frankincense is a resin, a dried sap harvested from boswellia trees that grow in the harsh, rocky terrain of southern Arabia and the Horn of Africa. When burned, it releases a fragrant smoke that rises upward. In Jewish worship, frankincense was mixed with the grain offerings presented to God, Leviticus 2 verse 1. It burned on the altar of incense in the temple, its smoke ascending like prayers toward heaven. Frankincense was the gift for a priest, someone who stands between God and humanity. And then there's myrrh. This is where the gifts take a darker turn. Myrrh is another tree resin, harvested from thorny comifera trees. It has a bitter taste. The name itself comes from a Hebrew word meaning bitter. In the ancient world, myrrh served 2 primary purposes. It was used as a perfume and as an embalming agent. When Nicodemus came to prepare Jesus' body after the crucifixion, John 19 verse 39 tells us he brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds. Myrrh was for the dead. At his birth, the Magi brought a burial spice. I want you to sit with that for a moment. These gifts weren't random treasures. They were a prophetic portrait. King, priest, sacrifice, and practically speaking, these expensive gifts may have funded Joseph and Mary's sudden flight to Egypt when Herod's soldiers came hunting. God's provision, delivered by Persian hands. What amazes me about this story is what the Magi didn't know. They weren't prophesying, not intentionally. They were simply bringing gifts appropriate for a king, treasures from their homeland, offerings of honor and respect. Yet without realizing it, they painted a portrait of Jesus' entire life and mission in 3 simple presents. Gold for the King of Kings, frankincense for the great high priest, myrrh for the lamb who would be slain. Centuries later, the book of Hebrews would describe Jesus as our great high priest who has passed through the heavens. Hebrews 4 verse 14. John's gospel would call him the Lamb of God, who takes away the sin of the world. John 1 verse 29. Revelation would crown him King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Revelation 19 verse 16. 3 gifts, Three titles, all foreshadowed by Persian strangers who never read those later scriptures. I find this profound, how God works through people who don't fully understand what they're doing. He weaves meaning into moments that seem ordinary. The Magi thought they were honoring a newborn king. In reality, they were declaring his destiny. And those gifts served a practical purpose too. When the angel warned Joseph to flee to Egypt, that family needed resources. A carpenter from Nazareth didn't have savings for an international escape. Gold from Persian kingmakers? That would fund the journey. That would keep them alive until Herod died. Divine provision, wrapped in prophetic packaging. Now I want to take you back to the beginning of the Magi's journey. We've explored who they were. We've unwrapped their gifts. But we haven't addressed the most mysterious element of all, the star. What exactly did they see in the sky? A comet streaking across the darkness? A supernova blazing where none had burned before? A rare planetary conjunction? Or perhaps a phenomenon that can't be explained by astronomy alone? A light that moved, that stopped, that led them to a specific house. In our next episode, we're going to chase that star. I'll see you there.